Many businesses run through the family, but distilling is one that truly transcends generations. I'm here with the legendary Jimmy Russell of Wild Turkey and his grandson, Bruce Russell. Jimmy, how long have you been distilling?
I'm in my 64th year. September this year was 63 years at the Wild Turkey Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky.
So your whole career has been at Wild Turkey?
At Wild Turkey.
How about you, Bruce?
I'm in my 7th year working for the company now.
All right, and have you gotten your hands dirty on the stills and fermentation?
A little bit. Mimi, that's what I call Jimmy. Mimi doesn't let me do too many things. He's very particular. He's afraid I'm going to break something. But he let me make a little bit. It's been good. I guess the first stuff that I had a hand in making is about 2 years old now.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in college for a long time. He was a professional college student, I think. We'll get him out. But then he come to work at the distillery and spent 4 months doing everything at the distillery. And in the last several years, he's been to Austin, Texas as an ambassador. He went down there to be an ambassador for Russell's Reserve. But something happened. He's an ambassador all over the United States now. He does mostly traveling for all the Wild Turkey products, but he was supposed to just be for the Russells, but he done such a good job. And he's coming back to the distillery January to start back at the distillery, going through all the work at the distillery, learning all the jobs at the distillery. So his time is going to have to change. He thinks day starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 6 in the morning.
Bruce, did you grow up thinking you were going to follow in your grandfather and your father's footsteps at Wild Turkey?
I guess when I was young, I thought maybe that's what I would do. Growing up, it was never a big deal, like what Dad or Mimi ever did, because we live in Lawrenceburg. It's what everybody does is working at a distillery. We're 4,500 people, 5,000 people in the actual town, and Four Roses and us are both there. So everybody knows somebody. It's like when somebody's like, oh, I had an ancestor that worked in a distillery. Yeah, if you live in Kentucky, everybody does. So I just figured that, that's what I would do. But when I got a little bit older, there was a brief time that I thought I would do something else. I wanted to be electrical engineer. But me and Dad kind of did the same thing. I got a summer job when I was 21. Started giving tours and fell in love with it right away. And I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. You don't push your children into nothing. I have an older son and an older daughter. They wasn't in the business. And Eddie was playing football for Western Kentucky University. And he tells a story that Mama told me to put him to work one summer. He says it's been a long 36 summers now. He enjoyed it so well. He's been there the whole time. But you don't push your children into anything. If they don't like it, then it makes it hard on the whole family. They have to make that decision for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm the 4th generation that's worked at Wild Turkey, 5th in the legal whiskey industry. And I'm the first generation where there's actually more than one of us. I've got a cousin that's like giving tours at the distillery and working in the visitor center now.
Mm-hmm. So is that family legacy for you? I mean, being the 4th or 5th generation, do you feel the weight of that when you go to work in the morning?
Absolutely not. One of my favorite things that Mimi has said a lot, he doesn't say it as much anymore because it's kind of cliche, and he knows that he's not just a good old country boy anymore. But he always used to say, I'm just good old country boy named Jimmy. And that's kind of how we all feel. We grew up in a rural community in Lawrenceburg, and you can't be too big or can't think you're too high up there. So there's really no pressure. It's something that I really love and that I want to do. Mm-hmm. And growing up, like he said, they never pushed me to get into it. It was very much do your own thing. Whiskey business is not good, but it's good now.
It's one thing that's always amazed me about Lawrenceburg, Anderson County. I'm still Jimmy. Usually when you're young, you're Jimmy, and you become Jim or James. All the people I went to school with was named Jimmy. They're Jims or James. Everybody still calls me Jimmy for some reason or other.
Is that just from being in a small town?
No, everywhere I go, I'm Jimmy.
It's just because you've become so well known, maybe? That
I'm not well known.
I would say that you're probably the most well-known figure in the bourbon industry these days.
People back home don't care that he makes whiskey. He was a really good athlete. That's what they always want to talk about. His high school days or his...
That's right. I heard you were a star basketball player.
I played.
Yeah, he was
I've
really
seen
good.
some old pictures.
He was as good as it could be at the amateur level for a really long time. He played semi-pro baseball too.
I didn't know that. Did you have aspirations for a different career before you came into?
I thought when I was in school, I thought I'd be a professional baseball player. But back in that day and times, it was only 8 teams in each league. They didn't have all these minor league teams and all. And what you had back in that day and time, they had semi-pro teams that you played on the weekends. And I played semi-pro baseball for a long time. But I played football, basketball, baseball, and running track when I was in school.
Do you see anything about your grandfather that particularly surprises you, even though you've known him your whole life?
Well, I think it surprises everybody whenever we first come to the distillery or we first see him out on the road. And Dad and Mimi are both this way. Who they are at home is separated from who they are kind of in the whiskey world. At home, Mimi, stereotypical Southern patriarch. He's strict and stern and kind of quiet at home. Doesn't talk a whole lot unless we're playing ball, and he was always he's a realist, and so like if I played good game. If I played bad, son, you give up in the third quarter. He's always been that way. And then, as I started to get a little bit more involved in the industry and saw him open up and be passionate and proud and loud about what he does, I think that's what surprised me the most, is this side of my grandfather. You saw it a little bit growing up, and I was lucky enough to grow up around the distillery, just like Mimi and Dad did within a handful of miles. And you see a little bit of it. When you see him out on the road, he's definitely a different figure.
What about you, Jimmy? I mean, has Bruce, in the last few years, how he's developed in his career?
That's what I say. He went to be just an ambassador for Russell's, and he's doing such a good job. He's doing all of our products now. He travels all over the United States, traveling as an ambassador for all the products. But say, January he's coming back to the distillery. He's going to get his hands dirty again.
Are you going to crack the whip on him? Make sure that he shows up every morning at
he better show up.
7 a.m. rolling barrels and
he better
scrubbing floors.
Oh, I hope I get the 7 a.m. job. I think they're going to put me on the second or third shift, so I'll be working until midnight or 4 a.m. or something like that.
It's good for you to know what it's like, at each.
Definitely. I mean, Mimi did it. He started out as kind of like a lab tech. Started out in the lab, but they moved him around to every job. Dad started actually at the bottom of the union. Mimi started before there was a proper union. But Dad started up rolling barrels and stacking cases and painting buildings and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's important. I mean, we talked about right before we started filming about the title Master Distiller. I don't even know if you could begin to call yourself a distiller if you don't know how everything is done. It's easy now. It will always be easy for me. It was not for him or for his contemporaries. We flip on a switch in the morning and the distillery runs. It's like magic. We take all his recipes and his formulas and how he wants to run his stuff, and that's how our distillery runs, where he stirred fermenters and turned valves to get grain and sit on top of a 200-degree still and took temperatures and proofs. I'll never have to do that. So I think it's important now for
You're
me.
not sure about that?
Well, Jimmy, you're such a traditionalist. I mean, you do things one way because that's the way it's been done and that's how you make good bourbon.
Right.
But with all the changes that you've seen over your career in this time, do you think Bruce is going to have it easier than you did?
Yeah, yes, because, when I started, everything was done by hand. Now you have a better, we haven't changed our formulas, the same percentage of corn, rye, and barley malt. We make our own yeast. We have our own yeast because, and all I can tell you, I know the yeast is 63 years old. It was there, and I got there, and we're still using the same. The equipment's so much better now than it was when I started. Like you said, that still gets up to about 240 degrees on the bottom, and you sit right on top of that still controlling it. Now these young people, you all have to have a easy thing. You had to have an air-conditioned place to sit in and do the controlling. But we had they said even the cooking part of it, and the cookers and all, it was hot, especially in June. That time of year, it really got hot down there when you're cooking up to 212 degrees and things like that.
How do you think you're going to be able to train Bruce to learn everything that a distiller needs to know if it's so easy?
Well, it's not easy. It's still the same thing. You just got to make sure everything's done right. Our computers, you can make computers now that you can run a place from way off. Our computers basically took the place of the hands. that we have to still have the operators. They have to sit and they have to push buttons, and they have to be there when they're weighing up the grain. They have to be there when they're grinding the grain. They have to be there in the cookers. They have to be filling the fermenter. When emptying the fermenter, they have to wash it and clean it out and everything. They still have to do all that by hand.
Are you ready for that, Bruce?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be that hard. It'll be tough getting used to it. Like he was saying, I've been on the road for the past 2 or 3 years doing the ambassadorship. So I think getting used to doing a normal kind of 9-to-5 job again will be the hardest.
What do you mean 9-to-5?
Yeah, I guess. Wait, what is it? 7 to 3:30 is the first shift. Yeah, it'll be harder to get used to that schedule than it will be doing the work. I've been in there and done a little bit of the work, and on the other side of the family, we got a farm, so I've done a little bit of that work. So that's kind of stuff don't bother me.
So the old ways of doing things and the new ways are not the only point of divergence that y'all have. I mean, I know you have a different preference for the way you drink your whiskey and what kind of whiskey you drink than Jimmy does. I mean, Jimmy, you are the traditionalist. You like that 8-year-old bourbon.
8 to 12.
8 to 12. No water, maybe a little ice.
A little ice.
Yeah. So this, I mean, we're drinking the Master's Keep Decades right now, which is a range of ages.
Yes.
10 to 20.
This is Eddie's product after he become Master Distiller. It's a combination of 10 to 20-year-old. It's got mostly 14, 15, and 16-year-old. And we're going to have 3 in this series. He had the Master's Keep, was a 17-year-old. Now he's got this one. Then we'll come out with another one. This will be his first as officially a Master Distiller. So this is his products. He's done a wonderful job with them. Like you said, it's rated high everywhere you go in the world.
Is it a little too old for you, though?
No.
That's why that 10-year-old's in it. If it was up to Dad, it would just be 15 and 20.
They bring me in the samples to taste, and if Eddie was here, he'd probably tell you that he'll bring me and sit on this, taste this, and he'll say, he can just tell the way when I taste whether it's better go change something.
And my favorite was it Diamond that was 13 to 16?
It was 16 to start out with.
Yeah, and Dad, same thing he always does. He never wants to tell Mimi what it actually is. So he'll just fill up a tasting glass just like this, take it into his office, and slide across his desk. What do you think? And he said, Mimi sipped it, shook his head a little bit, and said, it's way too old. That stuff's got to be at least 15, 16 years old. He's like, yeah, at 16. He's like, I don't like it. And it's for his 60th anniversary. And so Dad went back and he put a lot of 12, 13 stuff around there. So it's in that range.
Well, what's your preference, Bruce?
On the bourbon side, we have very similar palates in bourbon. Not overall, because I love rye whiskey and he's not a huge fan. But in bourbon, I do like more 8 to 12. I think our best stuff, limited, has come out at 15. I think older than 15, it's really hard for us to age whiskey with the flavor profile that we look for at Turkey. But we both agree, I think the best thing that he ever made was American Spirit was 15 years old.
We can control 100 to 150 barrels in them 7-story warehouses. It can be 30 degrees difference between the top floor and the bottom floor in the summertime. And we find some that's aging a little extra special. We'll set them aside 100 to 150 barrels, and we're tasting them every year. We've had a 14, a 15, a 13, 16, a 17, and then this one here. And we're tasting them. If they start getting that real, the longer you age it in that new oak, you get the oaky, woody, smoky taste. Me personally, I don't like it. If you like a woody, smoky taste, you like an older bourbon. But with 100 to 150 barrels, when it starts getting that woody, smoky taste, we can move them down and slow that aging down. We can't move 700,000 barrels. We got 700,000 barrels in inventory right now. But that's the way we do when we have a one-time limited edition older products.
When you're tasting whiskey, I mean, you've got 64 years of experience behind you. Bruce, you only have 7 or 8. Is there something that you teach him, or has he taught you anything about how to really assess the quality of a whiskey, or whether or not it's good, or if you think it should go into Russell's Reserve versus 101? I mean, how do you learn that from someone who just knows it because he's been doing it for so long?
You just try to watch and learn. It's not. I mean, he's tried to teach me a little bit, but a palate is a thing. It's an individual thing. Everybody has a different palate, and so I think what him and Dad have both done is, this is what you want to look for. This is the way you taste. But what you taste is kind of up to you. It's pure luck or maybe genetics. I don't know that we have similar palates, but I can always tell. What kind of my first thing that I did is Dad would take me to Warehouse A, which is the oldest warehouse on site, and he would set these single barrels out. And I want you to rate them. I want you to tell me what you taste. Write your notes down, and I'd write my notes, and we'd compare notes. And he'd either be satisfied, or I think you missed this, or where'd you pick this up? Because I didn't pick this up, that kind of thing. And now, after we've tasted so long, I've come to realize we 9 out of 10 times will always pick the same barrel as our favorite. And Dad's will usually be our least favorite, whatever one he likes. He likes stuff that's a little sweeter and lighter.
There's something in the genes there that just skipped your dad.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
What's the best?
Different profile in taste. You know, I use simple terms. If we all like the same food, it'd just be one food, one steak on the market or something like that. Everybody has a little different profile with taste, what they really like.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten from Mimi?
Do it right or don't do it at all. Or the way he says it, don't do it, or do it right or don't do it at all. And that's kind of like how he lives his life. He never does anything 50% or even 99%. He goes at it with everything he's got, whether it's out here on the road, traveling, talking to people, or coming to the distillery 7 days a week. That's what I've kind of taken away from it.
And that's what Eddie said. He didn't want to get in the business originally because I work 7 days. I still go 7 days a week now on Saturdays and Sundays. We're family. Our family is. We have breakfast together every Saturday morning, a little restaurant in Lawrenceburg. My wife and I usually goes out to visitors center and sit around a little while. Then after church on Sundays, we usually go out there in the afternoon and sit around. That's where I get to see most of the visitors because I've got a job to do the rest of the week. But get to see the visitors and say we're having a huge amount of visitors on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail now, so get to see them and listen to them, see what they have to say about it. That's where you get your education, talking to people, let them tell you what they think about it and all.
Are you proud of Bruce that he chose this path?
Yes. He wouldn't be there. I got 6 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. I got a granddaughter, my daughter's daughter. She's in the business now. Bruce and actually we're the only ones that I know of right now. It's 3 generations of the same family working at the distillery together right now.
I think that is the first time ever, also, at least in bourbon.
It might be. We're also the only ones with 2 master distillers.
Yeah, that was. I hope we can ask Eddie about that sometime. But that was an interesting choice. It took how many years of Eddie working at the distillery before you thought he was ready?
Normally, you just have one master distiller, but he's been there and he does everything. So it's time to promote him up to master.
Yeah, we can't.
But you weren't ready to step down.
We can't make any more bottled and bond products. You're only allowed 1 distiller. We have 2.
Is that part of the law?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, you know. He'd been there. He'd done earned his title, so we made him master distiller. And nowadays, I have a lot of master distillers, but.
How long is it going to take Bruce to get to that?
Well,
to get to that point?
On what he does and how long we stay in.
34 years?
I don't know. He might not ever retire, so maybe never.
Oh, yeah. At my age, you know, I tease and get up all the time. You know what I'm hoping now? That I'm still living. See, we're making bourbon we're not going to sell for 7 to 12 years from now. At my age, I hope I'm still living when it's sold. You young people don't think about that.
Well, did you think about that when you first started 64 years ago? Did you think about, you know, what age were people drinking bourbon back then? Most of it was
21.
No, I mean, how old was the bourbon people were drinking?
Most of it was 6, 7 years.
Yeah. And over time, have you seen, that people are drinking older and older bourbons?
Yes, another thing I've seen, everything was bottled around 100 proof when I started, and then it went down to 90s and 86 and 80s, and 80s is the lowest you can bottle bourbon and call it bourbon. And what I've seen a huge train in the last 15, 20 years, they're going back, they want the high proofs now. We don't have to change. We kept, some of them thought I was crazy back in the 70s. Most everybody changed. You young people come along and start drinking that white stuff.
You
Gin,
probably were crazy back then.
gin and vodka. And a lot of the bourbon distilleries changed their formula, trying to compete making light whiskey. Even our federal government passed a law that you could make light whiskey, and it didn't go. And I wouldn't change it. They said I was hard-headed and stubborn, which they still say I am. I wouldn't change. And it's paid off for us because some of the bourbons was huge in the 60s. They're sitting on the bottom shelf now and don't sell hardly anything. But we've had every year, even though in the lean years we had a small growth, we didn't have a big growth. But in the last few years, bourbon has had such tremendous growth. Most of the bourbon distilleries are shorter bourbon right now. But we're still in decent shape, except rye whiskey. We didn't know 6-7 years ago that rye was going to make this huge jump, and we still can't catch up on the rye whiskey. I think bourbon's better between 7 and 12. I think rye whiskey is better between 5 and 8. And so we think we're catching up, and you keep drinking more rye, so we can't catch up with it.
But you're not much of a rye drinker yourself,
No,
so.
I'm not. Now, our bourbon's a high rye content. We use less corn, more rye, and barley malt more than most bourbon distilleries. But I've just never been a favorite. Rye's not been one of my favorites.
Now, all this time, you've kept up, like you said, you've kept up the same level of quality and produced the same style of whiskey for all these years. Do you have that expectation for Bruce when he takes the reins, not to compromise?
He better not.
Yeah, he'll haunt me for the rest of my life.
That's what it is. That's what he says. That'll haunt him for the rest of his life. They started saying they're more experimental than I am. But now you can't say I'm not experimental. I was the first one to come out with honey bourbons. 1976. I was the first one to come out with a cherry flavored bourbon back maybe before the time in the 80s. And then I come out with a bourbon finished in sherry cask.
When did you do a bourbon finished in sherry casks?
94, 95.
Oh, wow.
It's called Wild Turkey Signature. It was 10 years old, 101 proof, finished in Oloroso sherry. We couldn't give it away for free.
That was a really hard time to sell bourbon.
Yeah.
But like I said, they say I don't change, but I've probably done as much experimenting over the years. I say with American honey, it's called Wild Turkey Honey Liqueur original. American honey now, it's huge for us, and it's a huge market for us.
A lot of whiskey drinkers think that that's an abomination, that you shouldn't put any flavoring at all into whiskey, and no sugar, no liqueur, nothing. I mean, what would you say to them, who would probably be very surprised to know you invented that?
Well, the thing about that is you drink whatever you like. I'm going to drink what I like. You drink whatever you like. Same way with bourbon. I'm going to drink mine neat or on the rocks, but you drink it any way you like it. That's the way I feel about it. I'm not going to tell you what you like or what to drink or what to eat. You eat what you want. You drink what you want. And I'll drink it my way. You drink it your way.
He doesn't drink much of it. He puts it on ice cream.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Or on a hot day, the American honey to me, I work in my yard a lot with flowers and rosebush. If I'm real hot, I take 1 part of the American honey and 4 parts of lemonade in a tall glass with ice. It's very refreshing.
That sounds pretty good. Sounds good. Bruce, what about your grandfather that do you admire, whether it's about his whiskey making or just about him as a person?
To me, the whiskey making is, it's one thing, but I probably most admire his dedication to our family and the community as a whole. He talks a lot about his distillery family, and he really means that. And I think he kind of thinks of our whole home county or town like that. He used to keep the score for the basketball games. He was Mr. Anderson. Him and my grandmother were, Citizens of the Year, whatever. They were very involved in the community. And I really admire about that him, how much generosity and love that he shows, not only to me and Dad and our family, but the distillery people, the union workers, and also the community that we live in. He's a huge part of that.